Stumbling home, we don't know where we're going. Should've turned back hours ago. Out of our minds, I guess we're sleeping outside. You're still a good time, even in the cold.
Hello, welcome to Defender Adventure. We are Paul and Chrissy from the UK, and with our Land Rover Defender that we have called Sterling, we are travelling the world.
Guess we need a new plan. There's a motel a mile down the road.
Having discussed the Dalton Highway before we left the UK and agreed we wouldn't take this route, we now found ourselves creeping cautiously northbound, not quite sure what to expect. As the weather cleared, we stopped for the obligatory photo by the Dalton Highway sign, and it was here that we met fellow travellers who told us the road was in a reasonable condition, at least as far as the Brooks mountain range.
They did, however, warn us about the trucks. The Dalton Highway had been constructed as a haul road to support the construction of the oil pipeline that ran between Prudhoe Bay and Valdez, and nowadays it is used by the oil companies to transport supplies and equipment to the oilfield workers who were based at Dead Horse at the very end of the Dalton Highway. In the summer months, the highway is a mix of paved and dirt road with horrendous potholes. And in the winter months, it is better known as the road used by the Ice Road Truckers from the television series. The trucks thunder along at a high rate of knots and flick up stones as they do so. We suffered 2 chips in our windscreen in the same day.
We continued north until we had to stop for our next obligatory photo as we crossed the Arctic Circle. This was a big first for us. We had never before ventured this far north. Some 60 miles into the Arctic Circle and only a few miles past Coldfoot, we arrived at Marion Creek Campground, where we would spend a very pleasant evening.
Don't we make a great team? I bet you're watching this thinking that we've sped up the footage, but I can tell you that this is genuinely how fast we work together. We reviewed the map that evening and calculated that we had a journey of around 240 miles or 5 hours of driving if we were to go all the way to Prudhoe Bay at the end of the Dalton Highway. Continuing our journey the following morning, we started to gain in elevation as we entered the Brooks mountain range. While the scenery was getting better and better with every mile, The road, it seemed, was getting muddier and more slippery. With around 100 miles under our belt, we stopped for lunch at Galbraith Lake Campground, a barren and exposed piece of land which is at the start of what is commonly referred to as the North Slope, a tundra plain that falls gently from the Brooks Mountains to the Arctic Ocean. We spent some time at Galbraith Lake discussing the merits of continuing north or heading back south.
On the plus side, there was the potential to see some exciting wildlife such as caribou or musk ox. However, on the flip side, the road conditions were getting worse, but I think the deciding factor for our decision to turn back was that this was what greets you at the end of the road. Prudhoe Bay oil fields. You can't even make it to the Arctic Ocean unless you take a guided tour. Feeling a little like we had come so close, but also knowing that we had made a sensible decision, we returned to Marion Creek Campground for a second night there.
Leaving the mountains behind us, we drove the following morning the short distance to Coldfoot to fill up with fuel and breakfast. Coldfoot, by the way, is the world's northernmost truck stop. The rest of the journey south was beautiful but uneventful, with only a couple of things to make a note of. A fox carrying a bird, and a sign. Not sure how that place got its name. We had been following the oil pipeline for most of our journey, but now we stopped on our way back to take a closer look at this engineering marvel. The 48-inch pipeline is around 800 miles long and runs from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez. It crosses 3 mountain ranges and over 500 rivers and streams. It took over 2 years to construct and was finished in 1977 at a cost of over $8 billion. Due to the issue with permafrost, the vast majority of the pipeline is installed above ground. We called into a ranger's office located next to the pipeline and received the news that the road north of Galbraith Lake had been washed out in recent storms, so it was unlikely we would have got all the way through to Prudhoe Bay even if we had tried. That left us feeling much better.
Returning to Fairbanks, Sterling was given a good wash. And we then found a guest house where we could have a shower too. While we were at the guest house, Paul took the opportunity to investigate a small oil leak that he had noticed a couple of days earlier. It appeared as if the oil was leaking from the transfer gearbox, and to check if much oil had been lost, Paul needed to undo this plug here, conveniently located behind the handbrake. I'm not sure he had chosen the best location to carry out this task. After many words starting with F and a B, he emerged from under the vehicle, satisfied that all was well. When I asked him what was that in his hand, he told me it was a nipple greaser. He said he had a few more nipples to grease on the vehicle, then it would be my turn. After watching his technique and how rough he was, I politely declined.
I'll never tell, just trust that I'll keep it locked in a cell.
Keen to leave the busy town of Fairbanks, we headed out the following day along the Dalton Highway with the intention of going to Circle.
Yeah, I like you, that's for sure. Never have to close the door. Been a long time, a year before, and I'm missing you so bad. Gone away a month or more. Every show I go before, I need to hear that voice, cause right now feels like it's been too long. I could never let you go on thinking about those secrets true.
The journey was such a beautiful one that Paul decided he wanted to fly the drone. I suggested that I could drive, but no, Paul was happy that he could drive and fly the drone. I think he forgot he was a man, and it was of no surprise to me when trying to do two things at once that this happened. Not only had the drone crashed, but we had no idea where it was. Paul was watching the earlier footage on his phone to see if he could determine where the drone went down. In the meantime, armed with my bear spray, I set about searching in all the shrubs and bushes. It took about 30 minutes before I eventually found it, all tangled up with twigs entwined around the delicate gimbal parts. With the shrubbery removed, everything seemed okay, so it was sent up again to test out its airworthiness. Funnily enough, I drove this time.
It's as strong as a spell. I'll never tell.
We didn't quite make it all the way to Circle, and we spent the night camping in a small field near Central. We drove to an extremely cold viewpoint the following morning and stopped for a coffee and breakfast. The cold prevented us from hanging around for too long, so we set off for our next destination, which was to hike to the top of Tabletop Mountain. Chrissy signed in to the register at the trailhead and spent a few minutes reading some of the previous register entries.
Under the activity heading, most were listed as hiking and berry picking, but Paul's eyes lit up at an entry near to the bottom of the page. I still haven't got rid of the image of him with the nipple greaser and told him in no uncertain terms that hiking would be our only activity. Armed with my bear spray to keep both bears and Paul away, we set off up the long but steady climb.
It felt good to be out hiking after being in the car for a few days. As we neared the top, the sun warmed up and the views were terrific. But like all our other recent ventures, we never quite made it to our intended destination, in this case, the very top of Table Mountain. Let's just say we've been to the top.
We can't do that.
Look, get here. Hey, we're at the top. Yeah, high five. Hey! There they are. Who's going to tell them?
I am. You cheat.
By now, it was around early afternoon. We had finished the walk and only had around 4 miles from the trailhead before we arrived at our campground for the evening. We had a beautiful camping location and a sweet and sour halibut dinner. All of this made for a most enjoyable end to the day. Little did we know that the end of the following day would be even better. But that's for our next video. So thanks for watching and see you soon.
Goodbye.